funny. Really appreciate it, and thank you very much. Enough yakking and commercial message from me. Now time for our first author. Wendy Brenner is the author of 2 critically acclaimed short story collections, Large Animals in Everyday Life and Phone Calls from the Dead. She's a contributing writer to the Oxford American. Her work has appeared in Travel and Leisure and Plowshares. Her work has been excerpted in Best American Magazine writing, and although she's a Chicago area native and has been in Florida for many years before she joined the faculty at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, she has had her stuff, her stories included in the New Stories from the South anthology from Algonquin, so I guess that qualifies her now as a local. Please help me welcome Professor Wendy Brenner. Wendy.
I'm going to start us off on this round robin of reading. This is a little essay. I'm going to stand, if that's okay with everyone. A little essay that's coming out in the new Oxford American, which is the education issue. The editors asked writers to write about a moment in our education that was transformative, or else just what goes on in the classroom that people don't know about. So this sort of goes out to everyone here who's a writing student. This is memories of my own classroom experience. This essay is called Thank You for Holding Back Your Whispering and Note Sharing with Bruce. Recently, some old friends and I were messaging on Facebook about a guy we knew 20 years ago when we were all graduate students together in the creative writing program at the University of Florida. A guy we couldn't stand. None of us had kept in touch with him. I hadn't thought about him in years. A pale, sandy-haired, white-bread kind of a guy, nice-looking and soft-spoken, but with a slightly aloof, humorless air. I should also mention up front that he and I dated briefly, and it ended suddenly. So my recollections might be less than impartial. At any rate, the main thing my friends and I remembered about this person, let's call him Biff, was his love affair with Africa. Biff wrote only about Africa. Why is that sentence so funny? It should not be funny. Biff had earned his creds. We were all about the same age, a few years out of college, but while we were engaged in normal American activities like waitressing or selling pot or sexually experimenting with people of our own gender, or if we were gay, the opposite gender, Biff had been traveling in the Congo, participating in relief efforts on the ground in small towns and villages, witnessing firsthand the devastating effects of dictator Mobutu Sese Seko's regime, crushing poverty, famine, and disease, government-sanctioned massacre. Biff had returned to the U.S. only recently and come to Florida to write a memoir about his experiences, chapters of which he submitted for us to read and critique in class. He was a good writer, and his work, to the best of my memory, was graphic and graceful and harrowing. He wanted to fight evil and help save the world. He wanted to do good work. He was doing good work. So why was he so annoying? Well, for one thing, he refused to throw cans of hairspray or homemade gasoline bombs into the bonfires at our parties. And he acted so shocked and snooty about it. You're throwing jars of gasoline into the fire on purpose, he asked us. What the hell was this guy's problem? It seemed like he was trying to make us feel guilty all the time, constantly pointing out little luxuries we took for granted like ice cubes or food. His social skills seemed deficient or altogether lacking. One friend recalls, I remember when I first met him and found out he had lived in Zaire, I told him I had some tropical fish from there, as if he might know them personally. That was about as close as I ever came to relating to that guy, and it pretty much consisted of an extended moment of eye contact during which I must have hoped for some kind of bonding, while he looked utterly at a loss for the proper reaction. Since Biff's writing was so skillful, his subject matter so unimpeachably significant, we had no choice but to notice, hilariously, that he used the words manioc and tubers way too much. Yes, manioc flour and tubers were all the impoverished Zaireans had to eat, but did he have to say manioc and tubers on every single page? Soon it became difficult to keep a straight face in class when either of those words appeared on the manuscript before us. It is difficult for me to keep a straight face now, reading them. What the hell is wrong with me? Looking back, I can see that we were ruthless jerks, but from my current perspective, having taught creative writing full-time in an MFA program for the past 15 years, I see something important, even necessary, in our bad attitude. In our joyous, celebratory irreverence, we were asserting our right to exist, to speak up in our unsaintly voices and tell our own stories, which, unlike Biff's, might not so obviously matter to anyone. We were already well into our 20s, or alarmingly our 30s, surrounded by friends and relatives and spouses with real jobs. How were we supposed to combat the knowledge every waking hour and minute that what we were attempting was self-indulgent and unrealistic, probably impossible, and almost certainly a waste of time and resources better spent volunteering in a third world country or at our local soup kitchen? Who did we think we were, acting like we had something worth saying in this world? Challenging authority is part of any writer's or artist's job description. For me, I've come to realize it was an essential survival skill. Nowadays in writing workshops, we strive for a supportive environment. We ask and expect our students to be good citizens, but I can find no evidence that I ever was one myself. In the end of semester evaluation I received as a college freshman in 1984, my intro to creative writing professor wrote, "Personally, I found your written and oral criticism most enjoyable. However, many in the class thought you were too caustic, and I can see their point. You take a little too much delight in the execution, and instead of sawing away with a dull edge, I think you should sharpen your axe and make your point as painlessly as possible. Thank you for holding back your whispering and note sharing with Bruce." Bruce and I had gotten into an ongoing war with another student in the class whose experimental, authority-challenging poetry we found pretentious and arrogant. One poem consisted only of the words "kitchen sink" in the middle of an otherwise blank page. For our required written critique, Bruce and I cooked up a 3-page explication of the poem's many nuances of meaning and effect, analyzing the etymology of the two words and even their placement on the page, slightly above and to the left of center, possibly indicating the writer's political leanings. Kitchen sink guy got his revenge a few weeks later when, as an exercise, we all had to rewrite John Updike's story A and P as a screenplay and share our results with the class. The character of Big Tall Goonie Goonie will be played by Wendy Brenner, he announced. My feelings were hurt. I could dish it out, but I couldn't take it. Worse, I only got a B+ in the course. "Your first story was one of the best of the semester," wrote the professor in his evaluation. "Your second, one of the worst." Yet these humiliations didn't stop me for a minute. They only strengthened my defiance and idiotic sense of resolve. I recall these episodes now with a weird blend of mortification and pride. As one of my old friends eloquently put it in our discussion of Biff and others of our youthful acquaintance, I really was an obnoxious, uninformed, intolerant person back then. I like to think I've grown up substantially. I also like to think if I met the two of them today, I'd still instantly hate them both. All of the above may help explain why I was flattered rather than offended recently to discover a YouTube video that a group of high school students made of my short story, Nipple. It is a sort of absurdist deconstruction of the original text, guys in Fellini-esque drag playing the roles of the high school girl characters, with oranges stuffed in their halter tops and grotesque Texas Chainsaw Massacre makeup distorting their faces. Their YouTube description says, "This video was based on a short story called Nipple by Wendy Brenner. We decided to do a video project on it, but we made it 10,599 times more creepy than it was meant to be." This struck me not only as the best kind of compliment, but also as a strong indicator of these young artists' future success, and I sent the video's creator a message to introduce myself and say thank you. He never responded. He never responded. I am guessing he doesn't need